Today, we will be talking about how the rise of the cars led to the fall of the railroad industry.
In 1862, Congress argued over the urgency of bolstering the Union by binding the Pacific Coast more securely to the rest of the Republic. The Union Pacific Railroad was thus commissioned by Congress to take this task. Land grants were given to work on this task, and the workers were generously paid by the government, especially the workers of the Credit Mobilier Construction Company, by finding a loophole in the government and taking advantage of very high wages. The completion of the Transcontinental Line was one of America's most impressive peacetime undertakings. Not all the lines were built with government assistance, though. The genius in this enterprise was Cornelius Vanderbilt, who amassed a fortune of about $100 million in his railway system. By 1900, much of the nation's railroad system was completed. The railroad opened the way for the settlement of the West, provided new economic opportunities, started the development of town and communities, and tied the country together as Congress hoped.
As shown by the maps, the total mileage of the railroads in the country almost doubled in just 10 years. By this time, all railroads covered 93,267 miles, with every state being provided with a means of traveling by railroad. Railroads were quickly becoming an integral part of the daily lives of American citizens. Vanderbilt had created one of the most, if not the most, prolific and productive railroad empires in the country. The railroads helped Vanderbilt become one of the most richest men in America at the time, amassing more than $100 million. With the large sums of money came power as well. He observed the immense growth in the New York and Hudson Railroad in which he controlled. This railroad eventually expanded all the way to Lake Shore and Michigan Southern, allowing the tracks to reach Chicago. Vanderbilt's railroads encompassed an enormous region, controlling not only the city of New York, but Chicago as well. Railroads had carried Vanderbilt to the very top of the social ladder.
Many big business corporations at the time made a bulk of their money by cheating out consumers as well as eliminating any room for competition through immoral tactics. The railroad industry was no different in its ways. Railroad managers forced to charge high rates and competed ruthlessly in order to pay off the financial obligations. While abusing the public with high rates, they bribed judges and legislatures, employed lobbyists, and elected their own men to high office. For a time, railroad kings were industrial monarchs. They exercised a lot of direct control over the lives of people and ended competition to rule all the railroads. They created alliances between one another by granting lower rates to big businesses than small farmers.
Overspeculation in the railroad industry was seen around the 1920s as investors saw large growth in the field and wanted to maximize their profits. As large amounts of money were being invested, there was a lack of customers due to the increase in car production, which depleted the profits that investors wanted. Therefore, the railroad companies lost money as well as the investors. Eventually, this led to a fall in the railroad industry and was even a factor in the Panic of 1893. The unemployment rates skyrocketed and ghost towns were created. Ghost towns are towns that were growing around the new railroads in the West but became abandoned as a result of the fall of the railroad industry.
The invention of cars introduced a totally new way to travel that interested the people of America. Cars allowed people to be independent and less reliant on railroads to get them everywhere they wanted to go. This meant people could travel on their own time and have more control of their schedules. In addition, cars gave people the freedom to travel wherever they wanted. This was an interest especially during a time when leisure, activities, and vacations were becoming more popular.
The automobile also became more popular once companies began to market their products toward the middle class. This was a change because when the car industry was young, it was seen as a product solely for the rich because of its high prices. However, this change in marketing opened the product up to a totally new and large demographic. The ad displays just one example of the Model T car from Ford, emphasizing the affordable prices and even advertised a payment plan, achieving their ultimate purpose of making it as attractive and convenient for the middle class to buy.
In addition to the marketing strategies of car companies such as Ford, the extreme amount of cars being produced at the time also contributed to the decrease in costs. In 1910, the U.S. had 459,000 cars, and by 1914, 1.7 million cars were in circulation within the U.S. Therefore, the more of a product there is, the less valuable it is. In other words, the massive amounts of cars being produced made it less of a special product, but instead something of the norm.
So, how were cars able to be produced so quickly? Well, Henry Ford, creator of the Ford Motor Company, wanted to work on making cars more efficiently and selling them to a public at a lower cost. He and his team looked at other industries and found four principles that would further their goal: interchangeable parts, continuous flow, division of labor, and reducing wasted effort. Ford put these principles into play gradually over 5 years. In 1913, they came together in the first moving assembly line ever used for large-scale manufacturing. Ford produced cars at a record-breaking rate. That meant he could lower the price and still make a good profit by selling more cars.
The automobile reflected a new cultural outlook in America. People began demanding for cars because they allowed for more flexible and individual mobility. People were able to move to the suburbs, go on vacation, and just enjoy life. This was all occurring due to the growth in automobiles, which benefited the companies tremendously. With the large demand of cars, the automobile industry became powerful as the train once was.
Now, here is a quick timeline of the history of the automobile industry. So, to summarize, the rise of the automobile industry led to the overall decline of the railroad,